Yes, no, that's.
How do we come to jail? I mean,
How do we get,
Okay.
how do we get from here to that? Can't turn this down through here.
there's all,
Yeah.
Hi Richard, how you doing?
Good. If you're gonna make any public comments, there's a guideline if you get along.
Sometimes I get out of bounds, you know.
You're okay, but I need to get my phone.
That's the
Well, no, it's okay, you can sit there, it's just, I was sitting there and I got on my phone like. No, you're fine.
I got something. I got different ideas.
Yeah, that's the issue.
Daryl, that's the idea. I got one for everyone. Daryl.
Okay, hear ye. The Honorable Jasper County Board is now in session. If we would all rise, we'll say allegiance to our flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Sheriff. Appreciate it. Welcome to our special board meeting tonight. Glad you could turn out tonight. First up will be our roll call of members.
Michael? Sternberger?
Yes.
Turner?
Here.
Leffler?
Yes.
Huxley?
Here.
Liddell?
Here.
Swift?
Here.
Paul?
Here.
Morphle?
Here.
Hickox?
Yes.
Smith Henry?
Here.
Pickens?
Here.
Paul Felton?
We have a quorum. Thank you, Madam Clerk. Any public comments? Yes, sir.
My first question is, was this meeting published in the newspaper that there was going to be a meeting tonight for the special board meeting?
Posted
And put on radio.
as required and actually on the radio.
It was, say that again?
It was posted on the door 48 hours prior.
Yes.
48 prior, it was mentioned on the radio.
Okay, but it was not published in the newspaper in accordance with the county code from what I could tell. The county code requires any special board meeting to be posted in the newspaper. And that is 55 ILCS 521002.
Okay, what's your next question?
That's it. Just if it wasn't published in the newspaper, this meeting shouldn't go forward because it's not in compliance. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else have public comment? Questions? Okay, moving on, approval agenda. I'll take an entertained motion for approval of the agenda. Second. Danny, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, say no. Motion passed. Old business, jail project. That's basically why we're here. I called a special meeting at the last minute, meeting. With all due respect to Darren's family, he couldn't be here, and I didn't think it was appropriate to talk about this without you being here, as well as we had some other board members absent as well. So I called a special meeting for tonight to reflect on this project tonight. That's why I called this meeting. With that in mind, this board, as I mentioned at the last meeting tonight, we need direction as far as where we're going to go, because we need to have turn this over to our finance and get some money budgeted or in our budget if we're going to start this project. After after talking to Shannon, we probably wouldn't even start digging until after, the spring sometime, but we still have to get, this project ironed out, direction we're gonna go, and that's the purpose of the board meeting tonight, to get direction. I made that as clear as I could at the last meeting that we were gonna do that tonight. So with that in mind, I was gonna ask the building committee with their proposal, what you guys have for us, what direction you want us to go with your building. I would hope that you had brought in some of your people to explain how this building was gonna go up and how they're gonna connect it and so on. Do you have people that can speak for the steel structure?
As far as the steel structure, there's nobody here. They was contacted, some of them was, they wanted to come, nobody addressed to come. After hearing Shannon, of course, like I said, I wasn't here at the last building committee meeting when Shannon went, and I apologize for that, but I wouldn't have done it if I'd been here. But after talking with him and hearing his proposal and so on, I could see where his plans will work. I think there's probably gonna be some altering done. That's what we was talking about when we delayed things. That there's some fine tuning that's gonna be done. Personally, I don't know about the rest of the board. We've not had a chance to actually talk, but I think that we could probably, if I'm talking out of turn, Gary or AC, you guys speak up and tell me to shut up if you want to talk about it some more. But I think that we could probably go forward with what Shannon's plan is after it's critiqued, I guess would be the proper.
Yeah, it needs to go through design.
The proper word. It needs to be designed by the ones that's gonna use it, not by the ones that's wanting to build it.
Exactly.
Does that make sense?
Oh, absolutely.
Like I said, if he can do it for the price that he's doing it, and says he can do it for, that's comparable to probably to what we was talking. So I don't have a problem with doing that. I said from the beginning, we don't have a problem with how it's done as much as we do the price it's done and done proper to where we can afford it. And I think he's got a budget figured out that's affordable, it's doable. Gary, AC, Jeff, you guys are on the building committee too. Do you guys have anything to add to that or disagree with what I'm trying to say?
I don't disagree with what you're saying, is that on Shannon's proposal, there's some extra costs there that's not there, that we need to look at and see what the total cost of the project is. I think we had an idea about how much money we had to spend, and see if it stays below that, and if it does, I can see it be very doable. If it doesn't, we'll have to do some trimming somewhere, maybe hold off. We talked about some ideas, not doing everything on the first phase, doing it more on the end phases due to the cell block issue that was brought up. But cost-wise, the steel building would probably be a little bit cheaper, but there's some issues that Shannon brought up about codes that we have not addressed yet as a committee. So until they was addressed, I would not recommend the steel building until they were addressed. If Shannon's proposal is all by code, and he done the project for a little less than what he said, I hope.
Before we back up, I was going to give Shannon the opportunity to address the board members that weren't here in the committee. We're kind of talking over you guys. So with Darrell, when you guys are done with your comments, I was going to turn it over to him.
That's my point is,
And
Shannon had a good proposal there, as long as it meets our requirements of how much money we have to spend without raising taxes. Period.
AC, you got anything to add?
no,
Okay, Shannon, you can have the floor.
Taxes go up, it's gonna be my fault. So I've spent a little time with this, and some of the faces have been at the meetings that I've been presenting this at, and some haven't. I don't know if everybody seems to be heading the same direction. If I'm gonna go through the entire spiel of this, you've got this, and you can take it home and you can read it. My number's on the front. If you have questions, you can certainly call me with any question you have. But basically, we proposed a split-face CMU building, split-face block building. It would be an independent building from the existing cell block. If we go through here, we can explain a little more detail. The view you're seeing there would be the west elevation, the side that would face the alley. We've got a conceptual floor plan, and as they've mentioned, the people that are going to be working there and using the facility are the ones that need to have the biggest input. Obviously, Department of Correction would be involved to some extent, but we proposed, again, a building that's independent, that has a connection to the cell block with possibly some modification to the cell block as it exists in a future phase that would accommodate some women's cells, which seems to be a need that I've heard. Again, this is conceptual. We were just talking in between meetings there about how this could be redone and maybe even make a little more sense than what I've got drawn out here. But again, that's the purpose of the design phase and working through some of those components. But the idea was to put something at a scalable view that can we make sense of this square footage. You know, is 80 by 80, 80 by 40 sufficient enough to accommodate what we're trying to do here? And I think from just, and it may grow from this. You know, we may decide that there needs to be 10 more feet to the south or something. We can't really grow east and west, but we could grow north and south, at least south a little bit. The third drawing there shows how the proposed building would lay out with the existing cell block. Future phase being that the old house is demolished, and again, that could be an area that we talk about during the design phase that could be changed a little bit, but as long as we start with the concept that we plan to follow all the way through, everything should work out fine. It's when you start making drastic changes to a building design when you're halfway through it, you're already pregnant with it, that things start getting confusing. Fourth picture there shows a picture of the water plant that we built for the city of Newton. Ignore the back half, which is much taller. The front half, that shows a 10-foot eave height. That particular pitch is a 412 pitch. That's shown with an asphalt roof. Those are fixed pane windows, non-operable, just like these in here. That's kind of the way commercial buildings are built these days. They're climate controlled year round. You can do some things with the block itself to give it a little architectural aesthetic. In this particular building, we use split face block, but the colored block is actually a smooth face course that we did just to give it a little character. Okay. The fifth, whatever we're on there, shows it. Yeah, the pinstripes. The fifth drawing there is just basically a typical cut sheet for a cross section of how the building is built. A couple things I pointed out at the committee meeting is there's a 10-foot eave height from the finished floor to the bottom chord of the truss. It'd be very similar probably to the way this building's built. The bottom chord of the truss is at 10 foot, the suspended ceiling's at 8 foot, and you have that 2-foot climate controlled area that you can put HVAC, water lines, electric lines, fixtures, whatever. It's in a climate controlled area, not subject to condensation, which is important. You start putting that stuff above the bottom chord of the truss and you're subject to all that condensation. You have wet spots in the ceiling and everything else. So this is a good way of doing it. Again, we talked about the R values, and we'll get into that a little bit more in a minute. I put together a questionnaire, and at the time we were talking about, you know, the two different styles of building. 1A, is there a completed and reliable estimate for this type of construction that covers the cost of a turnkey building, in full concept, whether finished now or in stages? Yes. We're suggesting that this building would cost $150 a square foot, complete. That totals, we have it at 3,840 square feet right now. It's $576,000. Does it lend itself to phased construction? Yes. Does it reflect the use of prevailing wages? Yes. Does it exclude any anticipated costs? It excludes modifications to the jail, site demo outside of just what would be traditional excavation for the footers and stuff, relocation of the 911 communication fabrication equipment, and design fees. 2A was how would the end walls on the east and south wings be temporarily sealed and concealed around the existing cell block with the old house temporarily attached. In the review of that, I went and looked at that. The pier that would be necessary for that truss that would run, the truss would run north and south with the east and west roof line. The pier that would be required for that would have to be right where the back door is in the existing jail. Okay, so and then those piers can be large. When you're talking about trusses for a 90-foot span building, those piers could be 5 to 6 foot square. The truss typically sits on the outside perimeter of that. If it's spaced 5 foot away from the building, the wall's going to go right through where the antenna is. Probably isn't really even going to work. If statute 2B, I don't know if this is an issue or not. It's something that come to mind, but if statutory requirements exist that require housed inmates have access to sunlight, how will this be addressed? Our design would have minimal effect to the way it is now. 3A, does the proposed layout comply with the city's setback requirements? No. A variance will be required, but the variance appears to be reasonable and attainable. 3B, will the building comply with the Illinois Fire Code? Will appropriate ingress and egress of the building be determined? In the event of a fire or tragedy, will the county have protection? Yes. The estimate provided accommodates the building to be designed and built in accordance with the applicable code under the direction of an Illinois licensed architect. Will the building comply with the state plumbing code? Will detailed plans be provided to identify the proper location of floor drains, vents, waste plumbing, etc.? Should the state plumbing inspector require changes to work already completed, whose fault will that be? The estimate provided accommodates the building to be designed and built in strict accordance with the applicable code. Errors would be the burden of the contractor or the architect. Will the building comply with the Illinois Energy Conservation Code? Are the concrete foundation walls and the outer perimeter of the concrete floor being insulated to prevent floor condensation? This is just one question as it relates to the Energy Conservation Code. That's pretty strict. That's actually a federal requirement. It's passed down to the states to enforce. So there's several things that go into that in terms of R value of the walls and R value of the finished ceiling. Will the building comply with the American Disabilities Act? Yes. The estimate provided accommodates the building to be designed in strict accordance with the code. What are the foundation requirements and how close to an existing structure can they be built? This would be in a traditional framed type building, traditional 20 to 24 inch by 8 inch footings with a 6 to 8 inch foundation wall built to a frost-free depth. Could be constructed within 36 to 48 inches of the existing foundation, maybe closer, just need room to stack forms really. What do you consider about this option to be most beneficial aspect? This building provides a secure masonry exterior with a high quality insulating efficiency value. Its style of construction lends itself to the most cost-effective construction and accommodation of office spaces, while its independent nature allows for the practical replacement of the existing jail cell block in the future. The building may be constructed with or without a full basement, intended for storage only. The exterior of the building would be aesthetically pleasing and essentially maintenance-free. And then I had some specific questions for you to consider before moving forward. It was previously alluded that the L-shaped basement shown on the metal building plan would be for the construction of future jail cells. If you really intend to have a basement under a future jail cell, how is it being built secure and unescapable? It can't just be a plywood floor. Now, I understand there was some precast concrete being considered for that, but if the existing jail cells are to later be demolished, how will that happen within the confines of an existing building? How will the new building be secured while doing so? How will the debris material be extracted without compromise to the newly finished structure? How will the foundations be extracted with the inability to use heavy equipment? And even if possible, how is it considered cost effective? If the jail cells are never meant to be demolished, as was also alluded to at a previous meeting, what again was the purpose of the L-shaped basement? 2A, does the building primarily covered in sheet metal provide the most security to a building with live access to an active jail? And again, we've talked about, you know, a metal frame building where you could remove 5 sheet metal screws and pull back a piece of sheet metal, crawl through the wall, isn't really a secure building for somebody that's responsible for the containment of prisoners. And it doesn't mean they would have direct access to the jail, but they could certainly have access to an employee of the jail, the dispatcher, put them in a bad situation to where they're forced to do something potentially that they wouldn't want to do. I think it creates a bad environment to create something that isn't secure. So because of the steel truss style building offers no bottom chord, as a traditional frame structure truss would, how is it cost effective to construct a secondary ceiling? How is it cost effective to suspend HVAC, plumbing supply lines, electrical wires and fixtures, or to complete firewall containment walls? Does it have a vaulted truss ceiling, then a wood framed horizontal ceiling on top of the office wall, then a suspended ceiling? Is the building insulated under the steel roof panels, vents again above the frame ceiling? How's that dead airspace handled? And is there going to be a condensation issue? 3A was, if you're voting for a project to proceed that excludes the services of a design professional, which eliminates protection to the county and eliminates liability diversion, guarantees and assurances that come with a licensed professional, are you going to be around as future situations arise to defend them with your own rhetoric or opinion? If you don't know the answers to a majority of the initial questions above, why would you proceed without the involvement or advice from a professional to protect the county's interests? And are you proceeding with a concept that exerts reliability the next generation can rely on and be proud of? And I'll tell you that one of the other things that I mentioned during the building committee meeting was the height from the threshold of the door to the top of the facade is 13 feet. The design of this steel truss would be such that at the bottom, for a 90-foot span, I'm going to guess the bottom's maybe 12 to 14 inches wide. The outside of the building would stay vertical. The inside of the truss would slightly angle as it got to the top, and then it would carry that greater dimension to the peak. At that top point, it could be as wide as 20 to 24 inches to carry that 90-foot span. If it's 13 feet from the top of the facade, or from the threshold of the door to the top of the facade, you could have to be 15 feet to the top of the truss. In the center of a 90 by 90 building at 45 feet with the 212 pitch, that's going to add almost another 8 foot. So this building could end up being 23 foot tall. And if the area you need to create the office space is only 8 foot tall, you'll have 15 foot of dead airspace in the center of this building that is not necessary. And that, combined with the way the piers would have to be built to support the truss, I think if you look at that closely, they're going to have to be moved away from the building. Their size is going to be sufficient enough that the excavation itself would require them to be moved away from the building. It's almost going to be impractical to keep, though there was discussion about not building that particular portion until a later phase, but I think it's the location of that truss is going to be in conflict with the radio tower that nobody's interested in moving. And I think that this building, again, provides a secure, workable, non-reliant on any existing foundation of the old structure at all. And the old structure can be modified, destroyed, replaced, and it's not going to have any effect on the building that you build today. So I'll take it that far. That's a reduced version. If you want me to go further than that, I'll.
No, I think that's very well said. I definitely will open this up for obviously a lot of questions directly from you and the building committee. One question I did have, though, I'm going to kind of throw a whole link into this. If did you guys ever come up with a cost to demolish the old building once we get going with this?
No, there was never,
We haven't looked at that yet.
no, we not, because we didn't know when that would even be. There's not, the way we was talking about doing was that could be, that could, when initially, that could have been 7 years down the road when we initially started talking this. And to get a price today that would reflect something 7 years from now
Right.
it's hard to do
But we
too.
have no today price.
Something relative on that would probably be between $25,000 and $35,000. The cost of the demolition and the extraction of material and disposing of it is one thing, but then building back that end wall that would have to be built to contain the jail again is another separate cost.
So the reason I ask, if you could take that $25,000 to $30,000 and buy 5 acres, would it be cheaper to build all starting from scratch and go up instead of trying to go around the cell block, later tear that down, put new ones in? I mean, I'm looking down the road here, is that,
Something to be considered.
we never did look at the cost of tearing that down compared to maybe moving on the outside of town, putting up a whole new, same size, but, we'd save the cost of that building, tearing it down if we didn't have to. Just something to throw out, I would just do that.
Sure.
Something else we could think about.
And during the design phase, we could kind of compare it. We could put some numbers together for a new jail, complete, and kind of compare them.
The worst thing about that is when you go to talking a new jail complete, it went, that $560,000 doubled anyway, because the expensive part is gonna be building the cells. And doing all of that, plus, you've got to move all of 911 wiring and all that stuff. That's not cheap.
I'm not sure that's not what we should do anyway.
All the fiber optics and everything.
Right? I mean, some of our radio situations aren't the best now.
It's gonna cost what it's gonna cost. I mean, when you're relocated from this room to this room, where you redo it, almost probably gonna be about the same. But that antenna is the big money.
Yeah. But you could leave that antenna there and still utilize that antenna 4 blocks away.
Well, I mean, basically, that's what we're doing now with Norse. But there's other antennas and radios on there, so, I mean, you do anything you want when you got
Right.
the money.
Again, I just threw that out, something to think about. I know that's maybe not what you guys want to think, but I just wanted to throw that out. Go ahead, anybody else have any questions about his actual proposal?
Yeah, why can't you get a cost on moving the tower, like we originally talked about, moving out of town? See if it's cost effective.
We could, I mean, that could be done, something that, we was told, the committee was told that they looked into that a few years ago and said it wasn't feasible.
Nobody's seen any numbers though.
I've not seen any numbers on it, they just said that it was astronomical and it wasn't gonna be
Just a thought.
feasible to do. I don't know what the number was.
Remember, I had heard one time when we talked about maybe moving out to Brush Creek several years ago, that was one of the big kicks on the fence, what it's gonna cost to move that tower.
But you don't know what dollar was it?
I don't remember now what dollar it was. I don't remember what I had for breakfast either, so I'm not surprised at that.
Yeah, but with broadband coming into the county, I mean, that's gonna take care of the entire cost some, isn't it? With the new broadband service coming in.
You see, that's, I mean, when we do our budget, and we gotta figure that out, what needs to be done, on which way to even go on that. And that's, that's 911 just as all part of that, when the time you start switching out radios, and that'll be a big expense to the county.
Well, getting back to Sam's original proposal, you guys have any questions on, what he's proposed as far as how the building's gonna go up, the cost? I mean, that's why we're here tonight, to discuss this, kind of hash it out.
Personally, after hearing what Shannon had, and I'm one person sitting around this table. Personally, I don't have any problem with going forward with the project that he's got kind of sketched out, with knowing that the sheriff and 911 is gonna construct the floor plan, and then, like I said, we had talked about maybe altering the L shape and doing that in a different phase and wait until we got the other tore down to accommodate cells and stuff. You know, so there might be some change on this, so I don't know for sure how to address that, whether you're gonna say, yeah, we're gonna try to go with this, because then when it comes back, the plans.
Well, you're moving forward with the concept,
Yeah.
and it's pretty close to, you're moving forward with the concept.
Yeah, so I mean, I would make a motion to move forward with that concept, if that's.
Well, we're not ready to make a motion yet.
But I mean,
I'm not gonna-
well, I know, but I mean, you know, that's my opinion. I mean, I don't have a problem moving forward with that concept. Like I said, we would, with his figures and so on, if he, I'm sure he's got the figures that we can go with.
What, I'm gonna put you on the spot. If we decide to go with this concept, what's our next 2 or 3 steps we need to do? I mean, none of us in this room's ever done this before.
Well, if you're looking to construct something for next year, or build up the next construction year, first thing we would need to do is you invite a contract to proceed. And that will either happen, there'll be civil work that's required to accommodate the parking and the design and everything on the outside of the building, and then there'll be the architect. The architect will either work for us or will work for the architect, one of the two. So either the contract, and we'll have to work that out with them. Does it make sense for the contract to come with him, or the contract to come with us? But we'll work that out prior. If you wanted at the next meeting, we'd work that out prior to. The second thing would be to take some of this initial concept stuff, kind of break it out into phases that we expect to build in the next construction year, and help you get those particular numbers ready for your allocations and budgets, okay? And then from that step, from there forward, we would move forward with this conceptual, we'd go to preliminary design after having sit and talk with Rick and Brandon and 911, or whoever's gonna be involved with that process. We put together another preliminary concept, scratch around with that, kick it back and forth between that team again, and then once we had a concept that group was familiar with, we would come back to the building committee or the full board and say, here's how that concept changed, this is what we're proposing. And maybe that got a little bit cheaper, or maybe that got a little bit bigger, but at that point, the concept, so you're only committed to those staged expenses, but you are committing to an expense involving a design team to help move this forward. So,
And you would have that expenses for us, see, we're starting our budget next month.
yeah,
Budget.
we can put that together for you.
Okay, bring that to our budget committee and
Probably shoot it a little high, but I know you try to keep a balanced budget. Try not to shoot it too high, but we'll work with you.
okay.
One thing that, we worked on this steel building project, and Shannon brought up some good things that we knew we might have some problems with, but we don't know because we haven't contacted anybody that knows. But I did some figuring with some prices that we got from concrete builders, excavating and everything. With the square footage that you're proposing here, a steel building of that square footage would be about $170,000 cheaper. Doing the square footage. Now, what kind of problems we're gonna have, with hanging the ceiling and stuff like that? We don't know. That's what he's saying, the hidden cost. We don't know. But if we was gonna do this a little different, rather than doing a 90 by 90 building at 18 foot tall, do a smaller building, a 40 by 80, that runs north and south at a 10 foot wall, just like he's doing. And that would probably lower the cost more. But I just want everybody to know that steel building is gonna be cheaper, but does it meet code? Does it do anything else that he's brought up with his
The
scenario?
sprinkler system, he's got that included in the cost, his cost.
I tried to include it all.
What did you base your cost on?
Terry Smithy doing the concrete, excavating, Ronnie Dial, talked to him on building offices. And the only thing I did not get was the electrical and plumbing and HVAC, but I put $150,000 in. And everybody I talked to thought that would be plenty to do it. So that's kind of where I'm coming to, but it's numbers, it's off the top of my head, talking to people that do the work, it's not talking to a contractor. That has, like he's basing his on projects that they have done. But if you really wanna know, I have to get the steel guys in here, get some drawings and basically have somebody like Shannon look at it and see if it's feasible, but I can't tell you that. Am I right or wrong, Shannon?
Yeah, I mean, if you want to look at that concept, I think it deserves a fair review. I question though whether, I mean, even if you went to for example, the city building is a steel frame building, the city hall. It made sense to build that building as a steel frame building because the north half of that was for equipment storage.
Right.
Okay? It made sense to do that. And then they wanted the clear span on that particular end of the building, so they dealt with what they had to deal with to accommodate offices on the south end of that building. When you're building a building for the purpose of offices, and you're not gonna get that bottom core to the truss. That's what makes all the sense of this. You're not getting that in that building. So now you're gonna recreate that at a whole nother expense. Now, I don't wanna be quick to judge your estimate, but I question that that's fair to say that that building would cost $176,000 less. I'll be glad to estimate it, but in the end, are you gonna have the secure building? I mean, part of this isn't all about cost. Sometimes, what makes the most sense? You know, I just think it's a bad idea to have something that has access to a live jail, and people.
Well, it's not, you know, you keep saying you're gonna take the screws off and take the tin off and walk in. It's gonna have plywood and drywall just like a regular office has. It's not, you know.
I'd hate to tell people.
You'd have to cut your way in, you wouldn't just walk in.
I hate to tell people how to break into a house, but a lot of times people break into a house through the door and window. That makes the most noise and the most scene of anything. The quickest way to get into a house is pull back a piece of vinyl siding and take a little hole saw, cut a hole saw at 7/16 track, poke a little hole in the drywall, and you're in. No mess, no scratches, no blood. Same thing can be said for that. And I'm not saying it's going to happen, but in the event that it would, they're never going to have access to the criminal. Okay, they're going to be confined to the jail. But they could get access to a person that works in the office, the dispatcher, whoever, and put them in a position, because there'd be a corridor right between the jail cell and the well, and yours would be a little different because it went all the way around. But at any rate, there would be an area, you know, that it could happen.
And what you've described would never get approved. We would never pass inspection to be a jail facility if that's the only thing between dispatch.
Yeah, I agree.
They would never approve it. That would be the problem. They would never sign off on it. That's some of the issue that White County had when they had 3 inmates skedaddle. They came in and had to overhaul a bunch of their stuff at their jail. Not to say that it can't be resolved, but I mean, you're gonna have to have block. I mean, they're not gonna let us get away with any portion of inmates being housed in a part that doesn't have block wall around it. When we're remodeling it. We get away with our current facility, which is not saying that we have, but you build a new facility, there's all those codes that we don't have to do necessarily now. Well, they're gonna kick in. And I can't answer what all those are either. I mean, that would be some engineer, somebody would have to come in and say, sign off on that. So that's the only thing that I would say is whatever you do, somebody needs to do what Shannon has done.
Well,
you know, for that, like you talked about on that.
You can block a steel building if you want to.
Right, so somebody would just need to, somebody's gonna have to sign off. At the end of the day, on whatever structure it is, somebody has to sign off that sprinkler system's good, we're compliant with ADA, Americans with Disabilities Act, you're compliant, the jail facility is compliant, somebody's gonna have to sign off on that. And if somebody can do that, somebody can do it, I mean, it doesn't matter, but I mean, we have to have somebody that can do those
And
things.
that's,
Or else the state's not gonna let us have anyone working in the offices or any inmates in there or whatever.
that's a question. On top of the, what was it, 560, 576, on top of that, what is the architect and engineer's fee gonna be?
I previously estimated that to be between 7% and 10%. And we'll have that by it won't be over that 10%, but, so there's an architect's fee, and when I talked to him on the phone the other day, he thought he was somewhere between 8 and 9. But there will be a little civil work required, it won't be a lot, outside parking, making sure we get the elevations and stuff right, for ADA compliance to get to the building. So you're probably gonna be close, it'll be under 10, but it'll probably be close to it, all inclusive.
So it's 10% for everything else, not 10% for you, 10% for the architect.
Correct.
70,000 dollars to have everything drawn up and everybody signed off.
Code compliant.
So what I'm throwing around my head is if we was to take our original concept and do what you're talking about, say it's $170,000 cheaper, and we,
That could be.
yeah, but and we had some, and then we took that to the engineers and and had them look it over and sign, draft it and sign off on it, and had that 70,000 back to that. Is that fair to, you see what I'm coming from? So that dropped up from 170 to 100.
Other than, I mean, because that's on top of this 576, correct?
Yep.
That's not figured in there, so you're 650,000
Yeah.
on it.
Yeah, this is a building cost, and that's why I put this in writing, so that there was no misinterpretation a year and a half from now of what that 576 bought. It's not buying out door parking and sidewalks and grass and shrubs. You know, it's not paying for relocation of 911 equipment. It's not paying for modifications to the jailhouse. It's not paying for a design fee. It's buying a completed turnkey building.
And we wasn't figuring parking lot and stuff either.
No. But the excavation was gonna take care of all the concrete all the way down.
Yeah, you're gonna remove it.
Yeah, you're gonna remove all of it, even though parking is gonna be.
Questions, comments, come on guys, now's your time.
Well, I would really like to see us move down the road on something. I mean, well, I think it's overdue, I think we're past due. And I think we need to move forward. But like I said, I'm trying to be open-minded. I'm not trying to say that our concept had to be the way. I'm not saying that at all.
Well, the time clock is ticking
Yeah.
on the cost.
Yeah.
The longer we wait,
Oh, I know.
you're right,
Yeah.
the cost of the keep going
Yeah.
up, so we need,
And ours keeps deteriorating, and after a while, the state's gonna, or the government's gonna step in and say, I'm sorry, people, you're done here.
Yeah, that's a concern I have. I mean, if you think about, every year we go, we get through inspection, but I think, is it fair to say every year, Rick, they come up with more things that they kind of comment to us about? Our dispatch center, the last time we had to do some upgrades to it, and 911, they made us, as far as I recall, from when they came through. So the issue is if somebody comes in and they say, well, you don't mean inspection, that means we gotta send our inmates. Right now, we have 14 or 15 inmates. Someplace else, house them someplace else, that cost.
And that's how we've got by this long, is because we keep telling them, we're getting ready
I
to
know.
do something.
Yeah,
We're getting ready, you know.
eventually they're
so-
getting tired of that story.
Yeah. Yeah, eventually, and if they do, then we'll really start to see costs, because you're gonna have costs housing those inmates other places. If you can get them all in one place, or Crawford can take them, some of them, we might have to send some to Lawrence County or Richland County, or wherever we can get them. And every court day, instead of have Chuck bring him over in the van, we're gonna have to, somebody have to go all the way and pick him up. And then the cost, it would just eat the department alive with overtime costs, just transporting inmates to court, you know, so.
Well, I'm tickled to death about the possibility of putting a new addition on. I mean, I think it's a great idea you guys have been working on, but what I am concerned about is working on that 30-year-old part to make it last long-term. I mean, yeah, it's probably gonna last for all of us sitting here, but is it gonna last 50 years, 60 years like the old jail has done? You know, I mean, I think the new drawing here, I think it's a great idea, and even the steel built thing is a great idea. I mean, it's moving forward, but I'm not crazy about the thought of putting a 30-year-old piece on this new facility. I'm just,
Let's not really build on to it.
Well,
And it's one of our newer buildings that the county owns. We
But I'm-
own a lot of them, it's a lot of work.
I'd wanna get down to the bones of it, and make sure it will handle another 30, 40, 50 year life expectancy. And I'm not sure it will.
And there was some. But what's the cost of that phase right there could be a lot more than what we're doing on the first phase.
And it could be. And
I
I,
think we can
That's what
afford
we
to
can't
do
afford.
it. I think we need to do it phases.
Well-
It's set where we can, in somebody, not us, but in 20 years, somebody can try it, put in a new jail.
I think that's the only way we can do it.
And there was some lengthy discussion on, at the building committee meeting, and Shannon alluded to about, taking a look at the roof and some options that could be done to that existing jail cell.
I mean, I just wanna make sure the foundation's good, and you go spending money on that thing, and, 15 years down the road, they're going back and scrapping it, or even 5 years down the road, and there's issues, and, I mean, I'm not saying it can't be done, I just think that it needs to be addressed, and make sure that it, sign off and make sure it'll withstand some years, I guess.
The biggest issue is the old jailhouse and the women's cells. That's the biggest issue right now.
And a two-story part,
Huh?
and being two-story.
Being two-story, you can't use the upper story. But the women's cells would be the next phase that you would have to take care of over the men's part. Now, if you had to make sure that you put everything together, that when you did the men's, it would all go into the plan, it'd be a circular jailhouse instead of blocks, then you would have to make sure that when you did the women's, it would fit in whenever you did the men's. That's what we talked about. But the women's would have to be done first, because I don't think you'd have enough money to do both of them at the same time.
And if you do it right, if you do the women's, add that part on in a manner that you can still go in and tear the part down now that we're calling the newer part, and not destroy the others, and take it out and put it back, and still have, in a phase, if you so desire to do that. I mean, that's the concept that we're talking about, trying to do it.
Yeah, I'm not saying we need to build the 30-year-old part, tear it off right now and build that, I just wanna see that.
If concrete and blocks is wore out in 30 years, his concept ain't what we want either. Because that's what it's gonna be.
But has the old part caused problems with the 30-year-old part? That would be my, I mean, and it may not be.
Not that you can tell, but they're not really fastened.
I mean, I'm not saying there is, I'm just saying I think we need to explore that and make sure that's for sure where we're at with that before we.
I don't think they share a common foundation wall. I think it'll be built much similar to the way we were proposing to build this. Foundation for the new part where it attached to the old building would be independent. So there'd be two independent walls that just were sealed together. I suspect that's the way that cell block was added to the old house. So it should be on an independent foundation. And if anything's settling, it's the old house. But we will look at it.
Yeah, that's my only concern. I think either plan is a good idea to move forward with, but I just hate the idea of building something and then attaching it to that, and 10, 15 years, we're doing something different. Not that any of us is gonna be here to make those decisions, but.
You will be, Doug, you're young. You'll still be here.
You and Brian.
Just to clarify though, you are designing this to where at a later date, if they want to tear the men's cell block out, it'll still be existing where we can attach right to this new building without too much trouble, correct? I mean, as far as the structure design, we won't have to tear out 3 or 4 walls to get, move buildings in and out.
I would be curious to know how much it would cost to do that in town. Because I think it's a lightning bolt. Has been several times over the years. Been a lot of insurance claims on that old antenna over the years.
It'd probably be cheaper to put up a new one rather than try to move out one. That's what.
And our radio service right now is not good, so
If you go to new radios, you may not need that tower. If you go cell phone, the technology, you're gonna go somebody's satellite, so.
Are you entertaining those Shannon's project, or?
Well, when the discussions, we're still kind of throwing out
Okay.
questions, I will hear just,
Let me,
go ahead.
procedurally, just where we're at. So what, really this comes up, I think, in my mind, as we need to budget money if we're gonna go forward with this. Sounds like if the interest is wanting to go forward, without making too many hardcore decisions, you could just say, this is what we're willing to spend on phase 1, so we can allocate it in the budget, so that you could do something next fiscal year if you chose, starting December 1. That's, I mean, so when you're saying entertaining emotions as options, I think you can always do that. And entertain, we want to go this route, we want to go this route, give some direction now. But also, I think it could be appropriate just to say, we're moving forward with the jail project, and we are comfortable allowing this much in the next budget year. And then you can go back and finish up some of these things, knowing that you set the money aside.
Kind of what and shove it back to the building committee and let them.
And then
do
once
their thing, yeah.
things are finalized or whatever, then you can go to finance and say, we've allocated this much, this is what we need, or, I mean.
But at least that way they know they've got the money behind them to.
Yeah, then you can start next year, and then some of the stuff can be finished up here, you know. Because I think what the thinking that we needed to do, kind of address it now, I think had a lot to do with, one, we were still entertaining whether or not we were going to work with the city. That window is closed, whatever's happened with that. Two is, we need to figure out what we're going to allocate in our budget. Because if we don't allocate for it, then you're talking about, you're going to have to go in and amend the budget, or do something else later. You can go ahead and allocate whatever that's going to be now. You could go high, whatever you want to say. This is how much we're going to allocate for that. You can do that now. So. And then fill in some of the gaps on some of the information that, you know, people have asked some questions. I mean, that would allow some time to finish up some of those things, knowing that the money's there, you know, when you're maybe ready to finalize what you're going to do.
So we could actually vote to go forward with the project, and then January 1 decide, you know, we're not gonna go through with this.
Right, because all you're doing is voting, yes, at this point, we want to move forward with this, and we're going to allocate this much money for the next fiscal year. We agree as a board, we want to allocate this much, whatever that is, for the next fiscal year for this project, and then move, you know what I mean, then you're set up to then go ahead and vote and move forward, and the money, because right now you really need to make sure, are you going forward and what money is going to be made available for it? That's really.
Yeah, I'll agree with what you're saying. That's been part of the building committee's problem. We didn't want to spend money, because we wasn't 100% convinced that's what we wanted to do, and we've been down we knew past boards had been down that road, spending money and not getting anything out of it, so we was skittish of that. You know, that's why we were trying to get numbers together ourselves and going about the hard way maybe. And coming up with our figures to see, because if we couldn't feasibly get it, there wasn't no sense in us doing it. But if we've got a number here that we can work with, that he can work with, finance says we can work with, then I agree 100% with what you're saying. Let's say, okay, we're gonna do this. If we can do it for X number of dollars.
Right, and I think that's really, you can do that tonight, and then go back and give him a chance to finish. I mean, Shannon has a couple of things I think he said that he wants to finish up, and then whatever else somebody wants to bring to the table, they can do that.
Each option, just critique it and see.
Then you don't have to close the door on anything tonight, you can let people kind of finish up on what you guys have been working on. I mean, but that's an option, or like I said, this board can certainly say, we like option A, let's do option A. and this is the cost for option A, or, you know, you can do that, but that allows you to kind of do it without. And somebody, there were some questions asked, what the tower, new tower, old tower, moving something, I mean, you could then look into some of those issues.
What was the cost of the excavation and stuff with the?
23.5, but that was with the excavation on the north side of the old jail block, building that all up, because it has to come up like 5 feet. Now we're putting dirt in there and compacting and all that stuff.
Personally, I don't think we can vote on any one thing and say that's what we're gonna do, because I really don't think we've got that one thing in front of us. I don't think your picture is 100%.
You're voting on a concept.
Yeah, right, yeah, I think we can vote on the concept, and I think we can vote on the money.
Yeah,
I don't
agree.
think we can say, we're gonna go with this.
I would discourage
This thing,
anybody picking, concretely saying, I move that we absolutely do X.
Yeah.
Because I don't think you're ready to do that, so I wouldn't do that, but I think it is acceptable to say, Jasper County needs a new jail, we are going to do this, enough's enough, we move forward, whatever the board just handles. We want to allocate this much money for what we consider to be phase one or whatever, we want to make sure it's put on the budget, because we're gonna have to do that next month and then lay it over, and that way it'll be on there when you want to spend it next spring or not spend it, but it'll at least be allocated. Doesn't mean you have to spend it, but it's there in the budget to be spent.
I agree with what you're saying.
I think everything Chad just said is, I agree with, and it's covered with the idea that you vote with a concept. We have to then move to a preliminary design, get the design team involved, bring back the, okay.
True
this-
numbers.
But yeah, now we can, this is still a rough estimate. Now we can fine tune these numbers, we can fine tune the design, and then now you're voting to proceed with the full implementation of this design. Go build it.
Right.
Okay.
So much money are we talking, doing all this concept and
Well, it's all included in the design fee. If you move forward with the project, it's all inclusive in the design fee. If you bow out again, 8 months from now and say, quit, stop, we're not doing anything, then you'll be billed for the time invested today. But if you move forward with it, it's all inclusive in the course.
What do you guys think? One thing I was gonna ask Brandon and Greg, do you guys
People, you know, just gonna be able to rag right quick. I'll get it.
Yeah.
paper towel?
What already?
Do you guys,
I got an pen, you don't have to sign it, blood.
excuse me just a second, guys, I was gonna ask you guys a question before you bleed out. Do you recommend, you guys could see us using that basement underneath it, would you recommend that or just totally forget that option? I mean, you're looking at a lot of evidence.
I mean, it is, Jerry brought it up earlier too, it's the cheapest square footage you're gonna get on that. I mean, now, if it's used like the old basement is now, I mean, 911's got a lot of stuff down there. And our jail has stuff, commissary stuff like that they can store down there. I don't know.
The question I would have is if we allocate that for office space or something that we regularly expect people to be in, does that then trigger the need for an elevator? Yeah. So it's only if
Yeah,
we
I mean, we don't use a lot.
I think
There's
because we're calling
open
it
areas
storage
now
and-
with the jail.
I think we get away with it right now because it's not, we don't expect necessarily someone to regularly work in that space. But if we say, we're gonna put an office down there, that triggers elevator. Or some form of means to get down there to comply with the American Disability Act.
I don't know about an elevator, but it's your terminology,
Yeah, it triggers some form of
We went-
compliance with the
When we
disability.
built the drive-in bank, and we went through this in '09, and basically, first they wanted to board one up, basement or the whole thing, and because the way the building was, we just got a partial underneath it, and it's got a precast on top of it. And when we got done, I asked the contractor, I said, well, did we save any money? And he says, you've got something better, and it would have cost you just the same if you'd put plywood, a wood truss floor in there. So it's pretty cheap dollars. And basically, what we've got over there, we basically got a vault underneath that. And then you get into, you can put your furnace and other stuff
Yeah.
down in there, or your mechanical. I mean, we don't want the 911 stuff in the basement. You want the stuff to be able next to the
That's the issue.
facility. But there's other things that you can go down there. And you can all.
No, I think
great evidence.
it's valuable for those things, yeah.
That's what
It's
we
good
talked
bang.
Yeah, I agree.
It's good bang for
Water
your dollars.
heaters, stuff like that.
It's perfect for those things, as long as we're not expecting, if we're not making someone's job working down there, we're good to go.
As long, someone's employment isn't dependent on their ability to access that basement.
Right.
There's somebody alternative that could do that.
Right.
They could.
Right.
Anybody else have any questions, comments?
We were right about the maximum span.
Have a PDR for each option, next board meeting?
Have a what?
Preliminary engineering report for each option?
Well, that's all quick. That's why I asked Jason what our next steps.
If your intent is to move forward with the concept, we'll have an agreement at the next meeting.
Okay. And that's September 15th? 13th.
I like the idea of allocating funds and then going to the next.
But they won't.
Or at least
Hey,
allocate
yeah,
it for phase one.
but they won't, but in fairness to
Project.
Shannon, they're not, unless you say, we wanna go forward with your concept, they're not gonna bring us an agreement and start working on the design phase. You get that right? As long as everybody, I mean, where I said at the basic level, if you allocate the money and say we wanna move forward, that's great, but if you don't tell this gentleman and his company, move forward with your concept, this will stay in this, where we're at now.
We ain't figured out what we're gonna do.
But I'm just saying, just so you know, like, I wanna make sure, I mean, I guarantee, and correct me if I'm wrong, they're not gonna start doing a bunch of work on the next phase until you say, yes, we agree with your concept, move forward. So,
Well, I think
But you
that-
can do
I think-
also, I'm
Which
just
I
saying.
think that dollar figure has to be figured into that also.
right,
Whatever
well, you
that-
need to allocate wherever money.
Yeah, allocate that money
Make
for that,
money.
for that design fee.
Right, but what I'm saying, he's not gonna have an agreement for the September meeting unless you tell him tonight, we agree, we want this concept, please start on the next phase. Which is something the board can do, I'm just saying, just for clarity, I don't think they're gonna send me anything to review or do anything else until that happens. If that's what the board, if that's what everybody wants to do, I'm just saying.
Which came first, the chicken or the egg?
Right, I mean,
That's where we're at.
Are you allocating money for all new desk and interior equipment?
probably
I mean,
not.
It's hard to
now. I
allocate
would
if you don't know what you're
That'd
allocating
be,
for.
that'd be
Just-
just phase.
Later on next year when we get close to,
The building.
right, getting close to where we can move into it, then we'll address that.
Hoping there'll be some sawhorse and plywood in that building.
There you go.
Concrete blocks.
I guess what we need, guys, now is then a motion to entertain to go forward with this conceptual plan from Shannon, and we'll have to set an estimated amount. Again, according to your proposal, it was 576 without a basement, 633 with a basement. And again, it sounds like entertaining a motion into go with proposal to, look at a basement at a later date might be an option, or something more that you guys would be using since it's a lot of storage and such, but.
I would rather figure the basement in and.
Yeah, I'd allocate the money for
You know,
it.
they
Decide
can,
right.
they can
Right.
decide later, hey, it's not feasible, that way it's allocated in there.
But I'm saying if we go with the 633 with or without the basement, the money's there.
Right.
They can decide later if they don't want it, that's, we still got the money there. So that's why I was gonna suggest we do the 633 under
And I
the
would,
proposal.
sorry, Ron, I would add in your 10%.
Yeah, it'd be 700,000 basically.
That cut it pretty close.
Like 696 and change, so if you did
So I feel like
700,000.
we've got a contingency built into that 150 number, so. I mean, again, we're moving forward with the conceptual. This is what you think it's gonna be valued at. We'll go through a design. It's gonna change. We've already talked about a few things that we might wanna do different. When these guys get involved, it may need to grow or shrink. When we come back with a final design and say, this is what we're asking permission to build, the design team is all in agreement. you guys are writing the check, this is the final design, this is the final estimate, this is budgetary estimate. Final design, final estimate, are you ready to go out for bid and build this?
Okay.
Then when we open bids, you'll know the real number, okay? But up until then, you got budgetary now, you'll have preliminary construction estimate when you're ready to build it, and then we'll have final bids.
Sound like a plan, guys?
There's money.
You would have the money to do it.
Yes. Without raising taxes. Gary,
What?
we're not gonna raise taxes on this initial project.
They're gonna keep doing that. Got nothing to do with that.
No.
Only had most like for 7 years.
Well, you need to clarify that motion.
All right, all right, hey, we're gonna sit here and kick the can all night.
I know. The motion would be to go forward with the concept from Shannon, what do you want me to call your,
Block building.
no, I mean as far as your company.
Connor.
Move forward with the conceptual diagram from Connor and Connor with the initial estimated cost of $700,000 budgeted for the project. Is that
Building and design. The building and design.
for building and design?
How much, I had a question over here, how much money do we have towards building a jail?
How much do we have out, set aside for a building project?
We have 150, we have 150,000 right now that's in the current budget, and you have a 500,000 CD that you can put into the budget for next year without getting into anything else.
What's the general?
After that, if there's more phases, because we're gonna do 700, we're gonna spend that all right first bunch, right? The 650,000. Where's all the money for the next phase is coming from? Anybody got any answers?
Don't discount the money that is probably gonna be available for from 911.
Good answer. We haven't heard anything from them. So, that's
Too much.
important, you know. We haven't heard
Money
any
there,
pledges
it
yet.
all depends how we spend it.
Yeah,
How much money it
you know,
takes to
that,
move, I mean.
I'm trying to say is the total amount that if we're gonna do all these phases, we're gonna need 911.
No, and there's
And
there's
we-
some point.
you know,
we don't know.
911, the 911 board is on board, so.
Okay.
But we know, we assume you're on board, but there's gonna be some point, we're gonna need to know what commitment you are on board with. I mean, I'm not trying to be pushy or nosy, but there's gonna be a time come when we're gonna say, we need to know what figure that is, so we know if we can go ahead.
It's just to start it, we can't finish it.
I second Mike's motion.
Well, wait a minute, you're going to read the motion, so we'll
Sure.
be clear on that. Mike made a motion to,
Move forward with the conceptual design with Connor and Connor with an estimated cost of $700,000.
let's move forward with the conceptual design.
With Rick and Brandon's recommendations on this design, on how we're gonna do this building, have you guys?
Well, they're
Yeah.
going to do that later.
Okay.
That'll all.
That'll all come back through building.
Right.
Okay, I have a motion on the floor. Do I have a
We have a
second?
second.
Who is the second?
Correct?
Mr. Swick. Okay, we have a motion, we have a second. Is there a discussion on the motion?
The only discussion that I want to bring up is we have to have enough money to do this. I mean, we're doing the first one, we've got to make sure there's enough money to finish it, because we got a lot of work to do after this on the jail cells. And I want everybody to make sure that we think we have enough.
Yeah,
You say yes.
This phase, what we're calling phase one now, was kind of what the building committee started out with, as being phase one and two together. I mean, we've gonna do this in two phases. And now that we're talking about doing it, is that not correct?
That's right.
So, so that makes them talk.
What money do we have after this
Yeah.
that will come in?
Yeah, how
Besides
much?
911, what comes out of our budget to make sure that we can finish this?
can we finish it without raising taxes?
Yeah.
Without raising taxes.
Yeah. Are we gonna be getting 100,000 a year for the next 4 years, and we can put to that then? I mean, that's,
It's doable, but we, like Linda just said, we need to kind of
Yeah.
start trimming our.
and that's
our
where
expenses
this,
here, guys.
that's where this 5-year plan that I've been talking about all has to play in effect, so that everybody knows we're all on the same page.
I think we are.
And,
Has there been any looking around for available monies to help fund this project of any sorts at all?
Is there grants or anything?
Yeah, I was thinking like rural development or,
You can't apply for most of that until you're done with what you guys are talking about now. Until you've done this step, you can't even turn in an application for that
Because
step.
they want to know what you're gonna do.
Right.
Exactly. before
And
they-
you gotta get beyond where you're at conceptual too, you gotta get to,
So
this
that's
is
a
what we're
possibility.
doing. And
I
then
know that Deb Burrell works for a rural development for the federal side. She acts like that there could be some money available for a project like this.
And there is money out there, you're not to the point where you can try to get it yet.
So
There's
just
money
throwing it out there.
Yeah, and there's money out
I
there.
don't know how much it is, but, you know.
That's it.
Any further discussion on the motion? Hearing none, we'll take a roll call vote. Please answer the third.
Waddell,
Yes.
Swift,
Yes.
Hall,
Yes.
Warfel,
Yes.
Hickox,
yes.
Smith Henry,
Yes.
Pickens,
Yes.
Michael, Berenbacher,
Yes.
Kerner,
Yes.
Leffler,
Yes.
Foster.
Yes.
12 yes.
Motion passed. Thank you, gentlemen, ladies. I will, at this point, we have no new business. No closed session. I will entertain a motion to adjourn. I make a motion.
Second.
Have a motion on the floor and have a second. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Meeting adjourned. Thank you.
Trying to help you out. I'm gonna try. I'm not sure. He could be a